Was this Pride Week? Was this Pride Week or the next week is Pride Week? It's still, oh, it's 9 already? Damn it. Wait, what? I thought U of A's Pride Week is coming up. Jasper, so different. Jasper Pride is, all right. All right, I try not to worry about that now. All right. Because I would have theme music around that. Swap, no, duplicate, that'll work. That will work. That will work. That will work. Good. Still where I want 1 hour ahead. They're not gonna fix it. You know, they're gonna just keep going so that the time will catch up, basically. All right. Hey, Carmen. Come sit. All right. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and they're Monday 9 a.m. So I appreciate you're here. So hopefully, well, we'll make it worth it that you're here anyway. So we're gonna finish up chapter 6 for the slide we have to. We're gonna cover for the study 2, midterm 2, right? Up until slide 13, I think. And then we're gonna work on the sample slides because sample, you know, midterm exam 2 sample file, because there are questions, they are important. They don't have the answer, so you know the answer if you need to, right? So you can work further as well. So in terms of chapter 6, leisure motivation, this is where we stopped in the last lecture. Did I record? I did record. We're talking about there are 3 within this intrinsic motivation. There are 3 quote unquote targets, 3 subtypes, if you will. What do we mean by intrinsic motivation? By the way, what is intrinsic motivation? For the sake of it, we're doing something for its own sake, right? We come to class because we want to come to class. I'm saying that doesn't happen often, so okay, that's okay. We play video game because we want to play video game, right? Not because we want to be famous or anything. And these are the 3 distinct aspects of that behavior we can be intrinsically motivated for: stimulation, knowledge, accomplishment. Things like pleasurable sensations, learning something new, and accomplishing, like outdoing yourself and reaching personal, meaningful goals. Now, today we start from here. Sarrazin and colleagues studied female handballers. So handball is a sport. It's a thing. It's a very exciting sport, actually. A lot of jumps, throwing. On average, what they found, they followed the different types of motivation that these female athletes had toward the sport, handball, right? What they found was that, well, they had quite a bit of intrinsic motivation toward the sports, especially stimulation. So probably they do training, so they feel that in the body sensations. They have that, you know, they run, so that speed in the face, you know, that feeling that you're kind of outrunning other players, you know, just kind of sneaking through the air defense and just jumping, that feeling, all of that, maybe sweating, but like, I don't like sweating, but, you know, sometimes present, you know. And followed by intrinsic motivation for accomplishment and knowledge. Now, what they did was a little unique because they follow those people, I think it was like a half a year, 60 months or so. When they did follow up, some of the women dropped out, as in quit the sport, because it was pretty competitive, right? Now, what they did was they compared these women who continued the sports versus who dropped out in terms of types of intrinsic motivation they had. So the women who dropped out from the sport were, well, lower on the all types of intrinsic motivation, but specifically, hey, ladies, especially toward the one toward accomplishment. Now, what does that mean to us? Let's say some of you want to, actually, some of you wants to be a coach, right? Whether it's the more competitive level, or some of you want to, you know, coach youth, playing soccer, hockey, whatever. Some of us may become parents. or some of you are already parents who have a children who, so there's that quote unquote coaching aspect between you and your children to an extent too. So what does that mean? So if you want your youth, your athletes, your children to continue the sport that they're passionate about, we have to make them feel intrinsically motivated, especially in terms of accomplishment. What can we do? What do we do? Remember, this is accomplishment. What do we do if you're a parent, if you're a coach, to prevent dropping out? Any ideas? Or go from the side? Curtis first? Yes.
They are people where they feel like they're challenged and they're doing well. So
yeah.
We want
right. Direction that we want to take is obviously we have to foster a sense of accomplishment. We have to be careful is that here accomplishment does not mean accomplishment as to some sort of external goals, right? It's more of a personal goal because it's still within the framework of intrinsic motivation, okay? So yeah, Curtis, you're right, like challenging themselves so that they are bettering themselves, right? They're a better player than yesterday or last week. Can they feel that way? More importantly, if you're a coach or if you're a parent, can you point that out for them? Because sometimes, you know what? You don't realize that. You can be that perfectionistic athlete that just like you feel like, oh, I'm not doing this right. I'm not, doing that right, and so on and so forth. You're always hyper-focused on something that you have to work on rather than what you have actually improved upon. So really recognizing that and sharing that with the athletes' children can be very important, for example. So those coaches tend to actually help them stay with the sports. And more importantly, actually, intrinsic motivation, research shows that it leads to better, like higher quality behavior. As in, for example, they're more focused, they're more thoughtful, as in they prepare, even for practice. They come to the practice with a certain goals rather than just like, okay, I'm here, just let's do this. Make sense? I'm here today, I'm gonna do A, B, C. Oh, I accomplished A, B, but I couldn't do C, so let's take that to the next session. So they're more thoughtful, they're planning, they're sustained, that their behavior is going to be sustained too. If you're intrinsically motivated, you're gonna just stick to that behavior longer, despite the challenges. Somebody get the message. You can check that. So now we're shifting gears toward the extrinsic motivation side. We look at the different types of, quote unquote, different types of intrinsic motivation. What about different types of extrinsic motivation? Krista, good morning. Well, actually, this is where the big actually, change from the RLS 100 and 223. They open up this can of worm, like extrinsic motivation. They realize that there's actually quite a bit of different types, subtypes, different shades of extrinsic motivation. I'm going to go through it one by one. And one side is more prototypical extrinsic motivation, right? Really, your motivation, your reason for behavior is something really different from the behavior itself. The other side of this spectrum continuum is actually, it's still extrinsic. It's not the behavior itself, but it's actually quite integrated, what we call integrated or internalized. It's close to actually behavior itself. So there is actually quite a bit of difference, especially top two are quite a bit of different from bottom two. Okay, bottom two, these two guys are more closer to actually intrinsic motivation rather than the other side. They're closer to intrinsic motivation in terms of impacts on human behaviors. That again, the quality of behavior is better. People sustain their behavior if they're here. We're going to get to that more. Anyway, going from top, external motivation is where you do something because completely external factors such as reward or punishment, to avoid punishment. Have ever your parents did your parent tell you, for example, if you do the homework, you get this treat? No, oh no, just like you do homework. That was my parents because, it's Asian parenting. So There's there's no treat per se. But what about this? If you don't do this kind homework, you're not going to get the TV privilege. Have you had that? Have you had that? Right? That's a very classic parenting technique. You know what? You can tell your parents that's external motivation, mom. That's not good, actually. Because the quality of this is about quality of motivation, by the way, we're talking about. And this is quote unquote, this is a worse kind. This is a better kind. Okay, this is not good, better, not a good. It doesn't lead to good kind of motivation. It will not lead to good type of behavior either. Then we move up one step, it's introjected. Now, so those external factors now become part of you, or actually inside of you, in your mind, in your head. So it's not quite external. So here you want to feel proud of yourself, like especially comparing yourself with other people or external standards, right? What the society want, like for example, kids to be, what society want students to do and be, right? And you compare to that and you're like, yeah, I'm proud of myself. Like, I mean, I'm studying like 60 hours, per week. I'm proud of us, proud of myself. Like, are you really? That doesn't, like, it's not necessarily a good thing, right? Or avoid feeling guilt. Hey, Colton. I do housework so that I don't feel sometimes, so that I don't feel guilty toward my, partner, and just like all the gender issues that we have in our society, so that I don't feel like, part of the problem too. So I try to do that. But then that's not a good kind of motivation, to be honest. That's introjected. We don't use that word, right? Introjected. This is the probably first time you heard. And then we get to the better kind, the better side. Identify the regulation or identify the motivation. That's where we do things because of our belief. We understand, we believe that certain behavior we're trying to do are good. They're important, they're worthwhile. They can be good for you. They can be good for your future. They can be good for your people around you or community, right? You understand it. You learn something. For example, you took health ed 101 or 100, 110, and you learn so many benefits of different kinds of exercises, right? And then you're like, you know what? I understand that. Okay, now I understand the scientific reasons around that. I try to incorporate that more in my life. Right? If you genuinely think so, if you're genuinely motivated that way, you're over here in terms of exercise. And then finally, integrate it. And this is kind of interesting one because it's a quote unquote closest to intrinsic motivation, but it's still a little different. Integrated motivation regulation is where we do something because that behavior and the value of it is fully internalized into your sense of who you are, your personal values. As in, it's almost impossible for you to think because it's just, that's me. I am badminton player. I play badminton. It's just my nature. I am a gamer, so I play gaming. Just part of my nature, so on and so forth. And the textbook talked about this tends to happen around, for example, serious leisure. When you are doing certain sports, for example, for 20 years of your life, it just become part of who you are. Somebody come to you and ask you like, why are you so passionate and do hockey so often? And you go like, well, because I am a hockey player. That's who I am, how I grew up, and how I have my friends, everything is hockey. Just because. So it's just integrated in who you are so much. Okay. Now, it's very important for us to be able to differentiate them. Why? Because, like I said, this was originally a broader category of extrinsic motivation. We open it up and we find a different shades. Actually, especially the bottom two and top two are quite different in terms of implication for our behavior. This leads to the type of things like, you know what, I'm here, let's do this. Yeah, mom, okay, I'm gonna do housework. I'm just like, I'm not gonna review it, right? I'm gonna just make sure that it's full, it's filled up, whatever that assignment is done, 2 pages, okay, 2 pages is done, submit, so that I can get to watch that TV. Versus if you're here, if you know that this assignment is actually important to me, important to my future, that's kind of weird 10-year-old or whatever, probably, but it's important to me, so I'm going to do it. Then you're going to be like, review, you do it. You maybe do extra research. I can make sure that I have the right information maybe, and then you review it, maybe double check, triple check, and you get a feedback, and you're like, oh, I got like 90%. There's like 10%. This was wrong. Review it and make sure that you do it right next time. That kind of behavior will happen here, not here. So if you want to be a coach, or for yourself even as a student, or your athlete, right? Or what do you want to be? You want to work with the youth camp. You want to work with the tourist or park visitors. This is where your clients you want your clients to be, toward your facility, toward your service, towards your program, toward your destination. This is not where you want your clients to be. Now, why this is important? Because partially, there's this intrinsic, another level intrinsic motivation, which is a whole different thing. But intrinsic motivation, think about it. It's the best, and we all talk about it. Oh, your future bosses, your colleagues are going to talk about intrinsic motivation is the best thing. But you know what the truth is? It doesn't happen all the time. Like, don't you have one of those things that some things in your life, it's good, but you never would be intrinsically motivated. Just you don't. Like for me, cardio. I know it's kind of weird coming from a guy who played badminton. I don't know why. But if you ever want to put me on that cardio, the running machine, whatever that thing you want to call that thing, half an hour, and for me to want, you want me to be intrinsically motivated for that, that would never happen. That would just like, I'm sorry, that would never happen, right? It's just like, I hate it. I just hate it. I have bad memories of it, But that doesn't mean that I cannot get here. That's the point. I can still understand the benefit of it, health benefits of it, for example, right? Or maybe I might get here too, even after what? That's important. If you want to be a physiotherapist, a kinesiologist, or a rec therapist, whatever, your clients may be like me. They just don't like sports or physical exercises at all. They may not intrinsically motivated ever, but they can be here. You might work with the youth, sports context, camp, outdoor. Some of us are indoorsy. We don't like bugs, muds, right? But they may still feel this way or that way. How can we do this? So recognizing these different shades of extrinsic motivation is very important, because this could be sometimes realistic praise for people to be. Now, what's your example of each of those things? One thing you do in your life that is external, one thing you do right now, interjected, identified, integrated. Please, this is important, because you know why? I already made the exam. So come up with example, and next step, one step, come up with examples. So you work on yourself, all right, your own example, and you share them with your neighbor. Do not tell, when you share your example, do not tell which type that example belongs to, and see if your partner can tell. Does that make sense? Right? So that's a good question, a quiz for your partner, but at the same time, you can test whether your example is, objectively speaking, it's actually external or not. If your partner says, oh, that sounds like identify, then that's like, oh, okay, so you want to probably work on your example better. Make sense? Step one, you work on your one example from your daily life. Yes, we have all of them, probably. And then step two, share without telling them which type of motivation is. Let's take 5 minutes, okay? 1 minute to think about everything, and we're going to share. Let's go. Yeah.
So is it one thing?
It doesn't have to be one behavior that applies to everything, okay? One behavior for external, one behavior for introjected, one behavior for identify, so it's just different things. External is easy.
So yeah, well, I'd say that would be to like getting good grades.
What's that?
Getting good grades and studying.
Oh, studying? Okay. That's a good one. Actually, reword. Yeah, reword being the grades, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
What's interjected?
um,
So when you tell to Alexia, you say studying for grades, and she
yeah.
she should be able to tell it that's external, which is like, yeah, she knows already, but
Yeah. I get what you're saying,
Okay,
but I'm trying to think.
keep going. Okay, now keep going, keep going. Okay, what's your example, Marvin? You got a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, for external, I did something like studying for an exam.
Gotcha, good one.
I haven't thought of anything for interjected yet.
Mhm.
Identified, I did like tracking my calories on my diet.
Mm.
And then for integrated, I did like going to the gym and then following like a routine.
So tracking your calorie because what? Because
Just because like working on losing weight, I know that tracking my calories and just keeping on track.
that's very important part. Yeah, because that's the about your belief part, right? Yeah, okay. And integrated what is what? Sorry?
Going to the gym and then following like a routine.
Oh, it's integrated. Cool. You show later. It just like I don't like these chairs. I know you don't like. Okay, after you Marvin, Jake, you can share once you're ready. Okay, we're moving to the share phase. If you're ready, everybody have everything. Everybody have everything. I hope. You thought that you can sit in a corner. Okay. Okay, I know this corner is coffee. So, what's the example? Okay, don't tell me which category it is. So tell me just one example that you have.
One example.
Mhm.
Going to dry land.
I have no idea what the dry land is. Sorry.
That's like the workout part.
Okay, going to dry land for hockey, ice hockey. Bob, Rob, Rob, right? Sorry, Rob. Sorry. What do you think? Hope was saying that going to a dry land
Yeah.
for hockey, to play hockey. Which motivation do you think it is, Rob? Tell us a little more about it. How do you feel when you're doing that?
Good.
Not good. Are you with somebody? Your whole team. Ooh. Now which one do you think it is? So which one do you think it is? Oh, that's a tough quiz, but I think I know which one it is. We're not the bottom. Huh? Top one external? Is it external? So what's the punishment you're trying to avoid, or what's the treat you are trying to avoid? I haven't tried to get.
Like you get punished like 10 days.
Oh, so your play time would be reduced.
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay. That sucks. Like even for the future games and stuff? If you miss it?
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay, that makes sense. I was going toward actually more of an interjected because you don't want to feel like a guilt. You would feel guilty for your teammates if you're not there, kind of thing. But okay, makes sense. Okay, so you see, like a little more detail. So now the fact that we went like, oh, kind of, or Rob got it right, like an external, that's good. But some of like I was like, maybe interject this side. So having that detail of like what exact punishment or anything like that, the playtime, example would be right there. Has to be right there. If I ever ask you something like that, okay? Okay, you got it? You got it? How was it? Did you understand? Oh, that must be external. That must be. Yikes! I really do not prefer to drop my pin mic onto the ground because it's really dirty, as you can see. Sorry. Did you find it helpful? And if it's okay, if your example is like your partner is like, I'm not sure if it's like external or interjected. think about what extra detail would have helped them to figure that out. Curtis.
I just had a question because I could put pretty much any motivation I have in any of those boxes,
Okay.
depending on how you phrase it.
Okay.
Because like if you're studying for a midterm to avoid failing,
Okay.
that would be punishment. If you're studying for a midterm because everyone else is around you studying, you feel guilt.
Mhm.
That would be objective.
Mhm.
If you feel like you're studying for a midterm to do well,
Mhm.
and it's important that you find
For a future
studying for a
career,
midterm
for
because
yourself.
it's a
Yes.
It just depends on the phrasing afterwards.
Exactly. But the fact that you would be able to, for example, depending on which category we're asking, for example, right? You can phrase them differently, means that you understood them well. And probably if it happens to your life, as in yourself or your children or your partner or your teammates or coworkers, then you're like, oh, you're there. You're up here, like you're here. You want to get down here, so on and so forth. So to me, that's important. That yes, you have that capacity, you have that ability, the understanding, and also the ability to actually discern the differences and actually match it. That your phrasing is matched too. Make sense?
Yeah.
So you are right. Like any behavior, our motivation, behind any behavior can be any of that. This is exactly why, like for me, it's impossible to feel intrinsically motivated. Probably I shouldn't say intrinsically motivated, but it's impossible for me to feel good about enjoying that cardio training on a tread machine. But some people do it. Some people run around like 3 hours in a minus 30 degree. I never be able to get that because that's why human motivations are so varying from people to people, situation to situation. Hope you don't mind. She was telling us, and we were doing that with the Rob, that her example was going to our dry land. Apparently that's a place. I'm not Canadian, so I don't know. To play hockey, to play ice hockey with her team. And she said that she's going to do that with her own team. She has a team, right? And she was like, I don't like it. Rob went for external because of that. She doesn't like it. I went for interjected. I thought that, she would feel guilty if she didn't show up for her team and stuff like that. But Rob was right. It was actually external because if you don't show up to that dry land in the future games and whatnot, her play time would be reduced. So it's very strict down there. But that key detail, right? That playtime reduction, right? That penalty needs to be there for us to be able to be that's external. Good example, right? Or if we give you the example, now hopefully you can pick up on those key details. You can deduce, okay, that is identified, that is interjected, so on and so forth. Good? Good? Okay, if you have more questions, let me know later. Now, the opposite of intrinsic motivation, the last piece we're missing. And you're like, Shin, we thought that opposite of intrinsic motivation is extrinsic motivation, right? In X, that sounds like opposite. No, actually, theory suggests that the polar, pure opposite of intrinsic motivation is called amotivation. A as in like lack of, like what's other words started with A in that sense. Anyway, it's about lack of intentionality. It's literally not having motivation, but it's kind of motivation because you're still doing it. You're still doing that behavior, but you don't have that intentionality. Bless you. You don't know why you're doing it. Now, it's difficult to imagine, right? It's difficult if you find this is difficult to imagine. That means probably emotionally you're in a good, you're not in a bad place right now, and that's good for you. Okay, but on our casual, like on our low intensity side, we can see like we do things mindlessly, right? We put on the movie, and I go for a snack and just eat mindless, just eat. Not like because I'm hungry or I need it or it just tastes so good, that snack, no. Although actually Doritos natural flavor is really good, but still, right? It's mindless. Sometimes this amotivation also strongly correlates with the many clinical disorders, like for example, major depression. When you're in that place, we sometimes feel like that autopilot mode that well, sometimes you don't feel like you're doing anything, but sometimes you get to do that, but you don't know why you're doing that. You're in that autopilot mode almost. You're barely doing it. You're barely functioning, day-to-day activity, but you don't know why. Well, I'm studying just because I have done it, but why? Why do I care? You can get to that level sometimes as well. Now, these researchers, Alexandris and colleagues, they found that actually amotivation was negatively as in inversely, like opposite correlated to recreation sports participation, meaning more amotivation toward sports, less sports participation. Opposite. Make sense? Makes sense, right? And what they found, interestingly, what they found was this. It was actually a stronger predictor than intrinsic motivation or extrinsic motivation. Obviously, the direction of correlation is different. Actually, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation were positively correlated to those things. So when you have these things, you tend to do more sports, especially intrinsic motivation. However, if you just look at the magnitude of the relationship, amotivation is more powerful thing. It's rare, amotivation is, but if you ever be in there, it's very difficult. What this evidence means that for us, like for practitioners, for coaches, for parents, for us to actually mitigate or prevent amotivation is arguably more important than facilitating intrinsic motivation because it's strongly correlated more. Make sense? And with everything together so far, we have this entire theoretical framework of motivation we're taking in this chapter and course actually, called organismic integration theory, OIT. You don't have to remember that name per se, but this is the ladder theory of motivation. OIT, if you see something like OIT, that's the ladder motivation theory. Top intrinsic motivation, we flip, sorry, because this is the better kind, okay? And the integrated, identified are pretty close to intrinsic motivation in terms of its impact, interjected external, or rather closer to the, these bottom three go together in terms of impacts to human behavior. People will just doing what they're doing, because some people force them to do or something like that. They just try to focus on finishing the behavior. They may even disengage. They may stop doing that as well. So we want people to be on the top end, not the bottom end. Okay. But sometimes it's intrinsic motivation is difficult. How can we get people to be here? Yes, yeah. What's up?
Any motivation then is a sort of apathy, like
Mhm.
you just don't care.
Mhm.
Or is it more like
Mhm.
you don't know how?
Yes. It's actually apathy is originally, I think, tends to be more sociological concept, but there's a lot going on with the connection going on with the apathy and amotivation too. Well, there's apathy, actually flow model says apathy too. Actually, that would happen quite consistently with their amotivation too. Another example of things people wouldn't be probably intrinsically motivated to, like something like, hey, public health, you're in a public health. You want to get people to get vaccinated. Not a lot of people will be like, hey, I'm happy to just get poked in with their needle. That's concerning. And that doesn't happen. And it's natural, right? That's just natural. But can we get people to identify the side? It's possible. And that is, according to psychological research, is much meaningful because there's important divide here, actually, in terms of implication for health behavior, sorry. Now, this is, I think, last slide. So this theory suggests that we can move up and down along the motivation ladder that you just saw for the same activity. Like Curtis was saying, same activity, doesn't matter. And that means that we are different in terms of, we can be different in terms of the quality of motivation, not just quantity, not just the level and the strengths of each type of motivation, but the different types of motivation. Make sense? And obviously we can have all different kinds of motivation at the same time. And typically there's one dominant one. And next section, we discuss some of the strategies and processes through which we can change our motivation, type of motivation, right? Go up and down the ladder, or we can help other people to go up on the ladder. We're going to do that after the exam. Make sense? Okay. Great. All right. Stop share. Sure. 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 Hey. Midterm 2. So I hope you took a look at this sample file. It's on eClass. It doesn't have an answer, so you're here. You get to see the answer. General overview and information about the midterm. It's this Wednesday, 9 to 9:50. Please come here by 8:50. Because Wednesday, we have a class afterwards. So I won't be able to give you extra time. I can't, I have to really stop at 8:50, at 9:50, okay? If you have accommodation, you probably take the exam on the second floor of the cab building over there. So you don't come here, okay? Midterm 2 is worth 25% of your final grade, starting from chapter 4, slide 441, about psychologically deep experience, to chapter 6, slide 13. It's close to book, like first time. However, this sample file is my way of trying to make it a little more open. Make sense? Did you get my message? It's a closed book exam, but this file is my way of trying to make the exam a little more open book. I try to be as clear as possible. All right, and there's going to be 15 multiple choice questions and 5 short answers, and there's going to be 3 practice questions, so 3 out of 15, so that's 20%. 2 short answers already here, so that's 2 out of 5, so that's 40%. That you may have a good idea of. If you haven't started, please begin your preparation with the revised study guide. It's on eClass. That's the only type you can see. I just chopped off at the very end of chapter 6. Review your notes along with the study guide. Use the study guide, original study guide, without any of your answers, quote unquote answers, and also the original partial notes maybe, to actively review, as in like, you know, kind of test yourself rather than try to just read the answer. Review the sample questions in this file. And not just review as in like, oh, this question, this, if I ever get asked by this about this topic, the answer is going to be B. No, I could still change that answer, right? Or tweak the question a little bit. So make sure you go back to the notes for each of the questions you see in this sample. Take a little extra time on the parts where we had some discussions and activity. That's important. That's why I'm trying to do the activities and discussion, okay? And then finally, if you have any question from now to the exam, email me. It would be difficult for me to respond to your email if it's 8:59 on Wednesday, but send it anyway. So, sample multiple question 1. Maybe for some of you, sorry, copy on the wrong pipe. This one was an interesting study because they compared flow across different type of activity. The study before that was like actually flow happen more in work. So work is more better for flow. But this study broke up the leisure category into different types. And they found that actually sports and creative activity has a lot of good things in terms of flow. Flow in sports and creative activity was characterized by more something, either positive emotion or absorption, than flow in work. Which one do you think? Positive emotions or absorption? And the second part, also having certain kind of leisure, like challenging, exciting, or relaxing, the night before would help us experience more flow in the work next day. Do you have your answer mentally? You chose? You choose in your mind? So what they found actually was that flow across different activity, different life domains can have different emotional tones, if you will. And flow based on a sports and creative activity has more positive emotion than the flow in work. Makes sense, I guess, right? Right? Work versus leisure at the end of the day. Well, having relaxing leisure the night before, the day before, actually help you because probably you can be more focused the next day, right? To achieve flow in a work. Ha! This is real. I love watching Harry Potter movies. I do. because I feel as if living in a magical world, and I just wish. It's very unfortunate that I could potentially become a professor. I could call myself professor, but I can't do that fancy magic stuff. Anyway, 2 hours of watching could feel, watching a movie feels like 20 minutes. This experience would be best explained by, okay, so this time let's do some little bit of polling, if you're comfortable. You can talk to your neighbor, this one. Just, do you think this is how? I think it's C. That's okay. Harding, you okay? You're like, I'm dead. I'm sure. I'm gonna go for this. Okay. Okay, you just tested your, like you have more confidence and comfortable because you shared your answer. Okay, who think it's a throw? A. Who think this is flow? Flow. Raise your hand. Osh. Okay. B, engagement. C, absorption. D, involvement. E, passion. Okay, so you are split between B and C. That's where I wanted to make sure that you have that understanding. And I'm happy that nobody chose actually A, flow. This is not flow because what's the skill that's involved in watching Harry Potter, right? Understanding British accent? Very. Though kind of love it though. Anyway, this is about narrative, right? The magical world, different part. You feel like you are living in, like you're going to that magical world. You're in that magical world, right? We learned the concept called transportation. You remember? And there's a movie, book, all that kind of stuff have that story to it too. Story is more related to the engagement. So I would go with the engagement, okay? Absorption is more about, at the lower level, it's a relaxing, sometimes repetitive, kinetic, like walking, kayaking, and all those experiences. At higher intensity, it's awe. So if I say this, like, this is like, whatever, like this movie is like awe-inducing, that would be a little different. So I could change this hypothetical scenario a little bit. So the point is, you can differentiate these three, especially these three, flow, engagement, and absorption, PDE, based off of their characteristics, okay? Make sure that you can do. Finally, sample multiple choice question 3. Need frustration. In a context of relatedness. Would it be a student who has many friends, feels they're socially awkward, has a parent who is supporting their social life, who belongs to a student club, or has a parent telling them not to hang out? Ooh, that's wrong. Sorry, hang out. Ooh, typo. Hang out. Hang out. Hopefully this is the easy one. Need frustration. Let's go from A. Who think A, B, C, D, E, F, E? Yes, E is the right answer. Thank you very much. Need frustration is about something like externally, like either other people or the physical thing, technologies and facilities and whatnot. They are actively preventing you from satisfying. So in this case, parent is preventing you from interacting and developing that relationship. Make sense? It could be coach, for example, in a competence context. It could be the coach who is, giving you a negative feedback always, for example. It could be a parent. In terms of autonomy, it could be a teacher who never give you any choice at all, for example. Make sense? Now the last part, short answers. There will be 5 short answers, but each question will be shorter because that way the point is going to be more scattered across different topics. So that if you kind of quote unquote blank on one topic, hopefully you won't lose too many points, right? Please do not use cursive writing, although I admire that because we can't read it sometimes. And make sure it's readable. Your answer is. Grammar errors, I don't care, as long as it makes sense. If it stops making sense, If a question asks for one thing, like one explanation, one example, please give us only one. If you give us more than one, we're going to mark the only first one. Because otherwise, what's going to happen? People can do shotgun approach, like, spaghetti and then which one stick on the wall type approach. Like you can write like 10 answers, right? That's not fair. All right. So short answer 1. You got a job in the recreation field. I want to bring some positive messages, framing in an exam. But your boss is a major fan of flow, the zone, and tries to make every single thing about program about flow. So provide one explanation, 1 point as to why flow may not be the best approach for some clients, some people, some situation. Support your point with the description of, about the type of, again, research findings we learned in our class. Okay? You want to know the answer? Or you want to just have your time? Think about it? Who wants to think about it? Who wants to be like, give the damn answer? I know you're not going to phrase that way. Okay. So I'm going to show it, but if you don't want to see it right now, right off the bat, that's fine. I'll try to keep it that way. I will try to spend a few minutes so you can think your answer first. About the research findings stuff, you don't need a name per se. Okay, you don't have to remember the names or pub year. As long as you can tell us that research finding details, I should know. And if I ask this kind of question, I would be the one who marks. Curtis.
Always also like found to be negative in 15 pictures. So like people that
That would be a good answer too. That's the slide, that areas of slide. Yeah, that part of the slides. So this is one example. Sorry, example answer. Another example would be, another study was about, sorry, I'm going to talk about the answer now. The Chinese student study, which was about Chinese people actually liking more relaxing experience. That's another thing, culture group, right? Another thing is addictive. The flow can actually be addictive. And we talked about at least 2 studies about gaming example. And man, I feel it, the flow when I'm playing game. Like my started to pray at around like 8 p.m. Next thing I noticed, like my wife is like trying to get my attention in the nicest way possible for her. And it's 10 already. The 2 hours, gosh. I'm not saying that I'm good, but still, You good? This? Okay, so addiction study is great one too. The last short answer, sample question. My research found a lower level of perceived freedom across leisure activities compared to previous study, similar study done by Dr. Csikszentmihalyi and Graf. And we did activity around this, remember? Discussion. So provided one logical potential reason why there was such a difference. And hopefully you remember some of the cues. And here is one example answer. That this one relates to the measurement. The 1980 study measured perceived freedom in a binary way, yes or no, 0 or 1, while Shin study measured it from 0 to 10, continuum. So in the 1980 studies, people might have felt freedom at, let's say, 5, 6, 7 or so out of 10, but they could only say yes, which counted as, well, felt freedom, right? So that could have inflated the percentage of leisure activity much more, like some of them are closer to 90%, but that 90%, many of them may have been just 5, 6, 7 or something like that, which we better captured with the 0 to 10 scale. And then that gets lowered. What were the other reasons do we remember from, potentially? Do you remember anything we discussed around that? Teresa. Yes. 90-80 study was about corporate workers versus our study was a student. Maybe potentially, let's say, corporate worker has that more clear divide between what is free, where it is free and where it is not free. Like work, not free. Leisure, but that makes it more, leisure, free time more distinctively free. Make sense? Versus students, like you're always student. There's no 8 to 5, right? Or 8-4 or 9 to 5, right? You're always like, oh, there's assignments. There's this thing you can prepare. There's that exam in the next week, so on and so forth. That you may always feel that constraint. Anything else? We talked about different Curtis,
Demographic,
such as
like, you're studying Japanese culture people,
Mm.
whereas the other ones were older people in the United States.
yeah, 1980 study was American, US American. Our study was Japanese, so maybe there may be some cultural differences as to that. Well, for example, Japan is known for that hyper workaholic culture that maybe just like more work. Even like leisure, they don't feel free. And also, Japanese culture tends to be more collectivistic, typically, more group oriented. So like something like socialization, which was actually quite not free, makes sense. It's like when friends say like, hey, let's hang out, you're like, okay, I have to go, rather than you can say no or yes kind of thing. Make sense? So you have some answers, some ideas, hopefully. If you have any more questions, you always email me. Good luck.
What is?
Hmm?
Is chapter 1
Oh, no. The assignment is after the chapter 6, so don't worry about it now. It's going to be next week anyway. Thank you, Luke. Appreciate it. I'm going to send an email.